Hi, my name is Tara Fueshko. Mr. Tobas has asked me to give my perspective on September 11th. I've known Mr. Tobas, let's just say, since his age was a single digit. So, so September 11th, 2001 was actually the second week of my senior year of high school. Uh, and just some background, Clifton in 2001 at Clifton High School had over 3,000 students under one roof, which in New Jersey made it the largest high school in the entire state. So what they had done that year was they had offered seniors and juniors who were AP and honors the chance to take something called zero period. And zero period meant you had to be in your seat for school at 7 a.m. in the morning. Now, that also meant you got out of school earlier, but you're basically going to school in pitch black darkness, especially in the wintertime. So I had gone in on September 11th for 7 a.m. Everything's, it's a normal day. And then second period happened. And second period would have been around 9 a.m., I think. And so second period, I was a student worker. I had a free period, so they gave me a job in the school, and I was supposed to carry messages, sometimes deliver students to like guidance counselors or one of the four vice principals' offices or the main office. And so that's what I was doing. And I turned the corner to the main office, and there's a boatload of parents all lined up, and the line is going from inside the main office to outside in the parking lot. And I'm just like, whoa, what did I miss? Right? So I go into the main office, excuse me, make my way through, deliver what I have to deliver. And as I go to leave, one of the secretaries goes, "Wait, can you help us out? we don't have enough student workers, and we need to get these students." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." They give me about 5 names. And as I'm making my way to the different classrooms to pull the students, I stop in at the office I was reporting to tell them what was going on. And they were like, "Cool, do what you gotta do, help them out." So it's while I'm picking up students and telling them their parents are here. And now I'm kind of scaring students that are younger than me because they don't know why their parents have shown up, because no announcement had been made yet about what was going on. And I still didn't know what was going on. So as I'm passing one of the vice principal's office, I hear the radio say the Pentagon's been hit. And I'm just like, whoa, who is dumb enough to attack the Pentagon? Because that's like automatic warfare. Still don't have a clue about the World Trade Center, the World Trade Center buildings. I would find that out later before I left school. And so now there's even more and more parents coming in, and it's, third period. I'm supposed to go to class. They still need help. So I asked the main office, "Do you need me to stay?" And they're like, "Can you?" And I was like, "I'll go tell my teacher you need me here, and I'll just come back." And they're like, "Great," because they're like all panicked in the main office. So that's what I did from second to sixth period. I basically would take a handful of names and where they were located, what classrooms they were located. And at the beginning of each period, I would show up to my class, tell them I was helping the main office out. They'd mark me present, and I'd go back out the door. I have no clue if anyone learned anything that day because I never made it into a classroom after second period. I couldn't tell you what happened. I did get gym credit though. They decided, because here's the kicker about Clifton High School. If you circle it 4 times, you've done a mile. And so basically I earned gym credit for running around the school that day instead of running around a gym. Speaking of gym, I had a classmate, Lubo, who was also a student worker, and he also did track and field. He actually wound up sweating through 3 shirts because as much as I was hustling, he was sprinting from class to class because we had that many parents coming in to pick up their kids. And unfortunately, some of them had people in the World Trade Center, and others were just panicked. So it was a mix of everything going on. So sixth period comes and I was done for the day. So I tell the main office, it's time for me to leave, and they basically say thank you. And they're still scrambling. And there's only two more periods left in the day, but they, you know, they still have parents just coming in nonstop to pick up their kids. And so I go home, and as I'm on my way home, I realize my mother's called me on my cell phone. Now, cell phones in 2001 were not cell phones like today. You could call, you could text if you wanted to take, 15 minutes to send a short message because you had to press a number 3 times to get to the different letters. So to get to the letter C, you had to press 1 3 times. And on my phone, you could play the game Snake. And that was it. But I had a voicemail from my mother basically saying I couldn't go into work that day. And I had 2 part-time jobs in September. And so I called her back and I'm like, what do you mean I can't go to work? And she goes, well, if you're supposed to be going to Patterson today, parts of Patterson are closed down. And I would find out why later. And so I was like, well, what about my other job? And she's like, you can't go to that one. And I go, why? And because that job was out on a highway and it was for a small accounting firm. And I would do copying and filing and stuff like that. And so it was very low key. And she's like, well, they've closed down the highway. And I kind of remember going, how do you close down a highway? Because Route 46 is a pretty major highway in our area of New Jersey. And it goes right into, you can go to New York City from Route 46. And so she goes, that's why. Basically what happened was after the World Trade Center towers got hit, they closed down traffic in and out of the city to keep everything, to try and keep chaos or further chaos from occurring. And so basically I wound up having to go home and do nothing. So I go home and I turn the TV on. And we had just gotten cable in 2001 because we needed a higher internet speed for my mother's job. The previous internet that we had was dial-up. So yeah, that's how old I am. So now I'm flipping through the channels, which are numerous compared to what we used to have, and it's basically the same thing on every channel. They're all talking about the Twin Towers getting hit and the Pentagon getting hit, and now I hear about the plane that crashes in Pennsylvania. And as I'm flipping through the channels, I come across the Spanish channel. And as I'm on that channel, they're showing footage of someone who previously had jumped out of the Trade Center. And once I realized what I was watching, I immediately flipped to the next channel because I was like, I can't even process that, but that's, some people wound up jumping from the World Trade Center because they knew that there was no way out for them, and so they decided to end it on their own terms. But yeah, so the school day ends, for everyone. I think it was 2:45. And now I go back to the high school. I pick up my sister, who was 2 grades below me. She was a sophomore that year. I pick up our neighbor. I pick up a couple other one classmate and a couple other classmates of my sister. And I drive everybody home. And we're not really talking in the car. We're kind of just all numb, you don't know how to react. And I go to bring the one girl home, Andrea, and cops have the street blocked off. And I have to explain that I'm bringing her home and I need to be let up the block. And they had closed off the road because the road split. And if you took the left, you were going up to where the sheriff's department was and everything. And they had basically closed it all off to get emergency vehicles geared up to go into New York City. So dropped her off. My sister and I go home. And we actually climbed out on our porch roof to see if we could see anything, because you could sometimes catch glimpses of the skyline in between the trees. And you couldn't see anything except for the smoke rising from where the World Trade Center buildings had once stood. And that was basically September 11th. A couple days later, they put up the lights, and a couple of my friends and I drove up to Garrett Mountain where we thought we could get a good view of it, and just kind of stood there in the dark in silence, staring at it, just trying to figure out how this was going to change our life. And it did. It at least it changed senior year. So, for instance, everything had a patriotic theme that year. Um, Concerts all had some type of patriotic music put into it. Uh, our prom fashion show had a patriotic theme, which was really weird. The choir, which I was in, was supposed to go to Iceland. So that got canceled. Basically, if you had a trip that you're supposed to take that required getting on a plane, that was no longer allowed. So once that was canceled, we wound up getting invited by Carnegie Hall to go sing there. And so we went, but we had to argue our way to be allowed to go into New York City to do it. And the concert wound up being in June, or late May, early June. And the principal, who's still very nervous following September 11th, made us take the George Washington Bridge, which was it's a longer way from where we live to go into the city to get to Carnegie Hall, versus the Lincoln Tunnel, which would have dropped us off in less time, but he let us go. And so that was my senior year. Now, I found my yearbook, right? And aside from the typical yearbook stuff you find in it, we used to do a thing where at the end you would get the current events of that year, so that way you could kind of keep in a memory of it. And it was called World Beat. And as you can tell, the first 3 pages are basically all a reminder of September 11th. And then even the newspaper that I was on had stuff, right? So the first edition, which way? This way. Had an article about September 11th and people's reactions to it. And yeah, that was my senior year. I don't know if you guys have to do this. In a lot of the schools in New Jersey, you're required now to wear a lanyard with your ID, a picture ID, showing who you are. And that actually got started after September 11th. So, like, basically in October, I came to school one day and they're like, you're taking a new photo and you have to wear your specific color because this represents your grade and it shows us you're supposed to be in the building. And it's become more as the years have passed, but it started because of tightening security measures after September 11th. So that is my perspective on what happened that day.